the long-awaited, very long-awaited sequel to The Devil Wears Prada comes out on May 1st, just a week from now. And I am going to do a little series on the two movies. The Devil Wears Prada is one of my favorite films from that era, and it was great to revisit it with our boys who got a kick out of it. And I'm going to talk about how the original one, at least, and I'm guessing that theme will follow into the second one, is the ultimate movie about trying to keep the work-life balance and how hard that in fact is. The Devil Wears Prada is based on Lauren Weisberger's 2003 bestseller, which is in turn a fictionalized account of her experience working for Anna Wintour of Vogue as her assistant. And apparently she didn't work for Anna as long, and Anna didn't even remember her. She was like, who's this person that's writing a book based on me? But she did clearly got to experience what it was like to work for this woman, and then she took it and ran with it and made one of the great stories, really, about women not supporting each other and trying to get ahead and all the delicious drama that comes out of it. And one of the things that one forgets about this movie is that it launched all sorts of careers in interesting ways, starting with the fact that they didn't even want to cast Meryl Streep for it at first because they didn't know that she could do comedy. So now we have Only Murders in the Building and we have Mamma Mia. We have a very clear sense that this woman, oh my God, can she do comedy? But this was her first role where she showed us that, which is an incredible thing to understand of the kind of doors this opened for her in the decades, literally decades, isn't that crazy, since the movie came out. And for Anne Hathaway, it was the first time that she got to play the lead in an adult film. Of course, will forever be our Princess Diaries princess, but this was a moment for her to grow up, and it opened Academy Award winning doors as well. And then even Emily Blunt got to come onto the screen truly into our attentions with her incredible performance in this film. And of course, Stanley Tucci is always Stanley Tucci, and one always loves him. But it's a film that, as it looks at work-life balance, gave a big boost to the work life of three women that we've come to love. And now they're all going to be together for the second film, and I can't wait to see what they do with it. But in the meantime, let's think about the first one. The Devil Wears Prada's protagonist, Andy, played with complete and utter empathy and helplessness by Anne Hathaway, is somebody who has great ideals, wants to be a journalist, and is living in New York with her handsome chef of a boyfriend, trying to make a living. And as somebody who also moved to New York with her handsome grad student of a husband right after graduation, I can say the city is a place that you really want to be in your early 20s when you're starting your career, because it is the most spectacular and rich of places, but it's also deeply expensive. And everybody's doing cool things, and you're so desperate to be part of the group. So we see her at a moment in her life where she is facing what happens to a lot of brilliant students, which is your whole life you've been in school and your teachers are there to nurture you and they think you're so smart, and you are. But then when you go into the real world, you're at the bottom of the hierarchy, and it's not people's jobs to nurture you anymore or to tell you how smart and lovely you are. It just isn't. They just need you to do your job. She ends up getting a job that she's in theory not qualified for because she's going to be Miranda Priestley's assistant, and she cares nothing about fashion at all. of course, she is very, very smart and competent. And that becomes the tension between Miranda and her, which is Miranda can tell this woman can do the job kind of in her sleep because she's got the brain for it. But she also feels like the fashion industry is beneath her. As a matter of fact, Nigel, played by Stanley Tucci, tells Andy that this job that a million girls would kill to have, she only deigns to have. And it's true. That means that our character must change. And the problem is that as she has this opportunity to change, she ends up in the clutches of Miranda, who can see just how much this girl can do for her, but who is also known for having zero boundaries with her employees in terms of what she asks from them. There's a million boundaries in terms of what they can know about her, what she'll say to them, but she demands complete and utter submission of these people's lives to her. I had a boss who was certainly not as competent or brilliant or well-dressed as Miranda, but that was my first boss in New York. And when you can't read the person and the person might always lash out at you, it really messes with your head. You're like forever not knowing when you're gonna get attacked by them in metaphorical attacks. And that's the situation that Andy finds herself in, and it results in her life-work balance really toppling over towards work because she is in an exploitative situation, and the lore is that if she can just do this job for a year, she can have any job in journalism that she wants. And it's that little carrot at the end of her rainbow that keeps her moving. But of course, as she starts to try to do this job well, it becomes very seductive and it changes her. The Devil Wears Prada is told from Andy's perspective. So our sense of Miranda is very much from the outside. That's what makes Miranda so terrifying and so intriguing. But we do get some glimpses at what it must be like to be this woman. And she leads a life that is completely ruled by her work, which is work she likes. But in order to do this work, she has to put on this persona that is terrifying and always put upon and always looking down on others and very much annoyed by everybody else's foibles. For Miranda to do this job that she really cares about, she must be terrifying and always isolated, because maybe she talks to Nigel a little bit, but not really. She lives in her big tower, of course, and she's there alone because there's nobody that she can confide her fears or weaknesses in, because the moment she does that, her whole mode of running the magazine falls apart. And that's her mission in life, is to make sure that Runway becomes the greatest magazine in the world. And she really understands the value of what she's doing in ways that Andy does not. That famous scene in which they're picking outfits for a fashion shoot and Andy laughs is a great example of why Miranda believes in this job, because she then, of course, proceeds with brilliant dryness and logic to explain how something like those belts led to the tragic casual corner cerulean sweater that Andy is wearing at the time. So for Miranda, this is kind of a sacred mission. She sits here, she decides what goes in these photos, and that trickles down to pretty much everybody, at least in the West, in terms of what they wear. So her job to her is one that really matters, and she's very proud to do it. But the cost is not just her life outside of work, but the loneliness of being scary. She chose this. This is how she chose to rule her runway universe, but it takes a toll on her. And as the film evolves, we see it more and more, which makes her more endearing as Miranda can be. Of the main women in The Devil Wears Prada, the one that gets the rawest deal is Emily Blunt's Emily. She is somebody who has been Miranda's number 2 assistant for years. Now she's finally become Miranda's number 1 assistant with Andy as her underling. And she lives for this job, for the ability to go to Paris with Miranda for a week and be part of that wild fashion circus and get all sorts of designer clothes. In order to do that, she bends to Miranda's will in every way. She only eats squares of cheese when she's passing out for weeks so that she can be really, really thin, so that she can look amazing, because she knows that Miranda wants them to look amazing. She's this person who just bends to whatever her boss wants, but Miranda has never bended, as far as we can tell, to what anybody else wants. She is somebody who got where she is exactly because she stands up for herself and she makes her own rules and she breaks other people's rules and she probably breaks her own rules sometimes. She is a lion of a woman. And as much as it is good for her to have somebody like Emily working for her, she knows that Emily can't get that far because she doesn't have that power that Miranda has, but Andy does. So as the film goes, Miranda starts to give more and more of Emily's former responsibilities to the person that she sees herself in. She sees the ability to lead and to go places in her, whereas as far as we can see Emily, all she sees is an assistant. That means that the more our poor Emily does her job well, the more she's stuck and unable to get somewhere that isn't just being Miranda's shadow. We'll see what they do with her in the sequel. She's not gonna be Miranda's assistant in the sequel. There's no way she spent 20 years doing that. And she also changes at the end of the film because she learns something about how she's been treated, and she does learn something from Andy. But in terms of what we see in the first film, our girl is perhaps the one who is most stuck in this impossible situation. Most of the screen time we get in The Devil Wears Prada happens around work. It is a workplace comedy. In terms of the cost of this work, we also get to see what it does to their relationships. And about halfway through the film, Andy's boyfriend Nate, Adrian Grenier, tells her, the person whose calls you take is the one you're in a relationship with. It's a perfect line to give us a sense of what he is experiencing. Apparently there's a lot of backlash against him as a character because he's trying to keep her from doing her job and he should be supporting her. And as somebody who's been in a relationship now for 27 years, wow, look at us, I can say I'm not entirely with that critique. I have a thriving career as an academic, as a content producer, as a writer. So it's not like my relationship has kept me from having a good career, but you do have to put in time in your relationship, and she isn't. That doesn't mean that she should quit her job. It just means that maybe she should quit her relationship. And she does, at least for a while. But I'm surprised that people find him to be somebody who is trying to hold her back, when for me he was basically just saying, look, there is a life outside of work and you're not living it, and if you're not going to live it, I'm going to go be with somebody who will. And I think that's a fair move for him to make, but apparently many people don't agree, which is fine. But for Andy, what we see is that as she gets seduced by this life, which does come with incredible perks, she is powerful. She is part of this world that she begins to understand is a lot more profound and life-changing than she thought it was. She also is unable to keep up with the needs of a relationship. So not only does the screen time focus mostly on work, we also get to see how her own life is focused only on work. And even though it ends with them maybe theoretically getting back together, even though one of them is in Boston and one of them is in New York, you get a sense that that relationship is probably beyond repair. Because we only see Miranda's life through Andy's eyes, and Miranda's very secretive and private. We don't get to see a lot of it. But what we know is that she has 2 twin daughters. She must not be raising these girls because her days are very, very long. Somebody else is doing a lot of the work of raising them. She's not currently married to the father of those daughters, and as a matter of fact, as the movie comes to a close, this guy also divorces her because it's very hard for him to be with someone who is way more powerful than he is. And I'm guessing he's not raising those girls because they're not even his kids. So we have these girls that I'm sure are raised by very competent nannies in their beautiful New York home. But that has to take a toll on Miranda. And then she's devastated that she's getting divorced again. And she's devastated on behalf of her children, but also on behalf of how she'll be seen and what people will say about her. So we get a sense that her personal life has suffered from this amazing job that she has. I'm not trying to make Miranda completely tragic because she's not, but I wonder if she's so isolated at work because she's so scary. Does she talk to anybody at home? Does she have friends? I don't know, right? Like, she clearly is not going to be sharing her dramas with her children, whose recital she missed because she was somewhere else. She probably isn't sharing it with her husbands either. If she was, well, her husband's now her ex. So it's an interesting portrayal of somebody who really chose her role in life. This is what she's going to bring into the world, and that is going to have a huge cost in terms of her personal life. But I'm guessing she would do it again if she had the chance. It's one thing to work all the time and to sacrifice much of your life to your professional endeavors. And it's another thing to betray the people you work with who, since you sacrificed your personal life to your profession, tend to be your closest humans, at least the ones that you spend the most time with and do the things that matter the most to you with. And that is the thing that The Devil Wears Prada really wrestles with, because as the film comes into its brilliant final act in Paris, of course, Fashion Week, we realize that Miranda is willing to throw all sorts of people under the bus, including Nigel, who is perhaps the one person she genuinely likes that works for her. And Andy finds herself thinking, is this the path I want? She seems to have come to terms with the possibility that her work life will be more important than her personal life. But now she must decide whether she is willing to, on top of that, have her work life be a place where she's betraying those who are closest to her. And as Miranda reminds her, she's already done it because she chose to come to Paris instead of Emily. And it was a choice. It was a difficult choice because otherwise she would have gotten fired and she would have gone through all this for nothing, and she wouldn't have been able to use this 1 year on her resume to get the job of her dreams. But it was still a choice. And when Andy realizes the person that she has become is when she decides she's done. She won't do this. That's a step too far. Whereas for Miranda, it's just business as usual. Of course, because this is a book that I don't think has any real villains. Miranda is able to see that as an act of power, not goodness. I don't know how much Miranda cares about goodness, but she respects that. And it then leads to her opening some important doors for Andy in her own Miranda way. But the film really explores what each of us are comfortable with doing and how far is too far. Luckily for us, it lands on two different spaces. Miranda does not have a problem screwing people over to stay where she is. Andy does. We'll see what happens in the sequel though. I don't know what themes they're going to be exploring. I know they end up coming back to each other and working together. But the question is that again what we're going to be looking at? Probably not. I don't know. Sometimes sequels are just retreads. I hope this one is not. I hope they go and explore different questions about what it's like to be a human being who's working and also living and trying to dance that impossible dance. Thank you so much for watching this video on The Devil Wears Prada. Don't miss next week's video on The Devil Wears Prada 2, where we'll see where it all went. But tell me, do you agree? Do you disagree? Which one is your favorite character in the film? Would you have made the same choices that they made? And if not, why? And do you agree that this is a film that really gets you to think about how difficult it is to balance it all? Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and as always, stay big-hearted.